Hello everyone. In today's video, we are going to discuss Freedom by George Bernard Shaw, a powerful and thought-provoking essay where Shaw questions what true freedom actually means. Is freedom doing whatever we like, or is it something deeper connected with work, leisure, politics, and social structure? Let's start. What is a perfectly free person? Evidently, a person who can do what he likes, when he likes, and where he likes, or do nothing at all if he prefers it. The writer begins by asking a question: who can be called completely free person? A perfectly free person would be someone who can do anything he wants anytime and anywhere. Well, there is no such person, and there never can be any such person. Means such a person does not exist. Whether we like it or not, we must all sleep for 1/3 of our lifetime. Wash and dress and undress. We must spend a couple of hours eating and drinking. We must spend nearly as much in getting about from place to place. For half the day, we are slaves to necessities which we cannot shirk. Whether we are monarchs with 1,000 slaves or humble labourers with no servants but their wives, and the wives must undertake the additional heavy slavery of childbearing if the world is still to be peopled. So, all human beings must perform basic natural activities like sleeping, washing, dressing, eating, and moving from one place to another. Half of our life is controlled by natural needs. Even kings cannot escape these necessities. Women have an additional burden of giving birth if the human race is to continue. So, human beings are naturally bound by physical needs. This is natural slavery to nature. These natural jobs cannot be shirked, but they involve other jobs which can. As we must eat, we must first provide food. As we must sleep, we must have beds and bedding in houses with fireplaces and coals. As we must walk through the streets, we must have clothes to cover our nakedness. Now, food and houses and clothes can be produced by human labor. We cannot avoid natural duties. If we need food, we must produce it. All basic necessities are created by human work. But when they are produced, they can be stolen. However, once produced, someone else can steal them. If you like honey, you can let the bees produce it by their labor and then steal it from them. Bees work hard to produce honey, but humans take it. You can make a slave of a horse. Instead of walking, you can force a horse to carry you. And what you do to a horse or a bee, you can get the upper hand of them by force or fraud or trickery of any sort, or even by teaching them that it is their religious duty to sacrifice their freedom to yours. Similarly, powerful people can enslave weaker humans through force, trickery, or even religion. So beware. If you allow any person or class of persons to get the upper hand of you, he will shift all that part of his slavery to nature that can be shifted onto your soldiers, and you will find yourself working from 8 to 14 hours a day, when if you had only yourself and family provide for, you could do it quite comfortably in half the time or less. Jibiso warns us, if someone gains power over you, he will shift his burden onto you. You will work long hours unnecessarily. If you worked only for yourself, you would need much less time. So, exploitation increases unnecessary labor. The object of all honest government should be to prevent your being imposed on in this way. But the object of most actual governments, I regret to say, is exactly the opposite. A true government should prevent exploitation. In reality, most governments do the opposite. Governments make people slaves but call it freedom. When physical slavery became costly, they replaced it with wage slavery and called it freedom. They enforce your slavery and call it freedom, but they also regulate your slavery, keeping the greed of your masters within certain bounds. When chattel slavery of the Negro sought cost more than wage slavery, they abolish chattel slavery and make you free to choose between one employment or one master and another. And this they call a glorious triumph for freedom, though for you it is merely the key of the street. Governments make people slaves but call it freedom. When physical slavery became costly, they replaced it with wage slavery and called it freedom. When you complain, they promise that in future you shall govern the country for yourself. They redeem this promise by giving you a vote and having to general election every 5 years or so. At the election, two of their rich friends ask for your vote, and you are free to choose which of them you will vote for to spite the other, a choice which leaves you no freer than you were before, as it does not reduce your hour of labor by a single minute. In elections, you only choose between two rich candidates. Voting does not reduce your working hours, but the newspaper assure you that your vote has decided the election and that this constitutes you a free citizen in a democratic country. The amazing thing about it is that you are fool enough to believe them. Media convinces people that voting makes them free. The writer sarcastically says people foolishly believe this illusion. People are misled into thinking they are free. Now mark another big difference between the natural slavery of man to nature and the unnatural slavery of man to man. Nature is kind to her slaves. If she forces you to eat and drink, she makes eating and drinking so pleasant that we have great difficulty in getting up in the morning. And firesides and families seem so pleasant to the young that they get married and join building societies to realize their dreams. Thus, instead of resenting our natural wants as slavery, we take the greatest pleasure in their satisfaction. We write sentimental songs in praise of them. A tramp can earn his supper by singing Home Sweet Home. Nature makes necessary activities pleasant. Natural needs give pleasure. People even celebrate these natural necessities. Natural slavery is pleasant and harmless. The slavery of man to man is the very opposite of this. It is hateful to the body and the spirit. Our poets do not praise it. They proclaim that no man is good enough to be another man's master. The latest of the great Jewish prophets, a gentleman named Marx, spent his life in proving that there is no extremity of selfish cruelty at which the slavery of man to man will stop if it be not stopped by law. You can see for yourself that it produces a state of continual civil war called the class war between the slaves and their masters, organized at trade unions on one side and employers' federations on the other. Saint Thomas More, who had just been canonized, held that we shall never have a peaceful and stable society until this struggle is ended by the abolition of slavery altogether and the compulsion of everyone to do his share of the world's work with his own hands and brains and not to attempt to put it on anyone else. Human exploitation is painful and cruel. No man has the moral right to rule another. Karl Marx showed how exploitation happens in society. There is constant struggle between workers, trade unions, and employers. Peace is impossible until slavery ends. Everyone must work equally and not exploit others. Naturally, the master class, through its parliaments and schools and newspapers, makes the most desperate efforts to prevent us from realizing our slavery. From our earliest years, we are taught that our country is the land of the free and that our freedom was won for us by our forefathers when they made King John sign Magna Carta, when they defeated the Spanish Armada, when they cut off King Charles's head, when they made King William accept the Bill of Rights, when they issued and made good the American Declaration of Independence, when they won the battles of Waterloo and Trafalgar on the playing fields of Eton, and when only the other day they quite unintentionally changed the German, Austrian, Russian, and Ottoman empires into republics. We are taught that our country is free. Historical events are shown as victories of freedom. When we grumble, we are told that all our miseries are our own doing because we have the vote. When we say, "What good is the vote?" we are told that we have the Factory Acts and the Wages Boards and free education and the New Deal and the dole. And what more could any reasonable man ask for? We are reminded that the rich are taxed a quarter, a third, or even a half and more of their incomes, but the poor are never reminded that they have to pay that much of their wages as rent in addition to having to work twice as long every day as they would need if they were free. When people complain, they are reminded of reforms like Factory Acts and education. Poor people are not told how much they truly lose. Whenever famous writers protest against this imposture, say Voltaire and Rousseau and Tom Paine in the 18th century, or Cobbett and Shelley, Karl Marx and Lassalle in the 19th, or Lenin and Trotsky in the 20th, you are taught that they are atheists and libertines, murderers and scoundrels, and often it is made a criminal offense to buy or sell their books. If their disciples make a revolution, England immediately makes war on them and lends money to the other powers to join her in forcing the revolutionists to restore the slave order. Writers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Marx, Lenin protested against injustice. Society labels them criminals. Revolutionary movements are suppressed. Powerful systems try to silence critics. England and other powerful nations try to stop revolutions and restore the old system of slavery or exploitation. When this combination was successful at Waterloo, the victory was advertised as another triumph for British freedom, and the British wage slaves, instead of going into mourning like Lord Byron, believed it all and cheered enthusiastically. When the revolution wins, as it did in Russia in 1922, the fighting stops, but the abuse and the calumnies, the lies continue until the revolutionized state grows into a first-rate military power. Then out diplomatists, after having for years denounced the revolutionary leaders as the most abominable villains and tyrants, have to do a right turn and invite them to dinner. They financially support their countries to fight against revolutionary movements. When Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo 1815, it was presented as a victory for British freedom. Ordinary working people, whom saw calls wage slaves, celebrated, not realizing that the victory did not increase their own freedom. When the Russian Revolution succeeded, the war stopped. However, Western countries continued to insult and spread lies about Russia. When Russia became powerful, attitudes changed. Diplomats who once criticized them now politely cooperate with them. Now, though this prodigious mass, a humbug, is meant to delude the enslaved masses only, it ends in deluding the master class much more completely. A gentleman whose mind has been formed at a preparatory school for the sons of gentlemen, followed by a public school and university course, is much more thoroughly taken in by the falsified history and dishonest political economy and the snobbery taught in these places than any worker can possibly be, because the gentleman's education teaches him that he is a very fine fellow, superior to the common run of men, whose duty it is to brush his clothes, carry his parcels, and earn his income for him. And as he thoroughly agrees with this view of himself, he honestly believes that the system which has placed him in such an agreeable situation and done such justice to these merits is the best of all possible systems, and that he should shed his blood and yours to the last drop in its defense. But the great mass of our rack rented, underpaid, treated as inferiors, cast off on the dole workers, cannot feel so sure about it as the gentleman. The facts are too harshly against it. In hard times, such as we are now passing through, their disgust and despair sometimes lead them to kick over the traces, upset everything, and they have to be rescued from mere gangsterism by some Napoleonic genius who has a fancy for being an emperor and who has the courage and brains and energy to jump at chance. But the slaves who give 3 cheers for the emperor might just as well have made a cross on a British or American ballot paper as far as their freedom is concerned. All this propaganda and falsehood is meant to fool the working class, but surprisingly, the rich and educated class believe it even more strongly. A rich man educated in elite institutions is deeply influenced by false history and biased political ideas. He is taught that he is superior to ordinary people. Workers are made to serve him. He truly believes the system is fair and perfect. He is ready to fight and even die to defend this system. The upper class is brainwashed into believing they deserve their privilege. Poor workers who suffer exploitation cannot fully believe this system is fair. Reality proves the system is unjust. In difficult times, they may rebel violently. A powerful leader like Napoleon may take advantage of chaos and become a dictator. People who simply vote in elections are no freer. Voting changes nothing in terms of real freedom. So far, I have mentioned nothing but plain natural and historical facts. I draw no conclusions, for that would lead me into controversy, and controversy would not be fair when you cannot answer me back. I am never controversial over the wireless. I do not even ask you to draw your own conclusions, for you might draw some very dangerous ones unless you have the right sort of head for it. Always remember that though nobody likes to be called a slave, it does not follow that slavery is a bad thing. Great men like Aristotle have held that the law and order and government would be impossible unless the persons the people have to obey are beautifully dressed and decorated, robed and uniformed, speaking with a special accent, traveling in first class carriages or the most expensive cars, or on the best groomed and best bred horses, and never cleaning their own boots, not doing anything for themselves that can possibly be done by ringing a bell and ordering some common person to do it. And this means, of course, that they must be made very rich without any obligation other than to produce an impression of almost godlike superiority on the minds of common people. In short, it is contended you must make men ignorant idolaters before they will become obedient workers and law abiding citizens. Shaw says he is not openly arguing because radio should not be controversial. He hints that listeners might reach revolutionary conclusions. People dislike the word slave. Some philosophers argue slavery is necessary. Aristotle believed society needs rulers and slaves. Rulers must look grand and superior. They must not do ordinary work. They need wealth to maintain this superior image. According to this argument, people must admire and worship their rulers to remain obedient. To prove this, we are reminded that although 9 out of 10 voters are common workers, it is with the greatest difficulty that a few of them can be persuaded to vote for the members of their own class. When women were enfranchised and given the right to sit in parliament, the first use they made of their votes was to defeat all the women candidates who stood for the freedom of the workers and had given them years of devoted and distinguished service. They elected only one woman, a titled lady of great wealth and exceptionally fascinating personality. Most voters are workers, yet workers rarely vote for working class candidates. When women got voting rights, they did not elect women who fought for workers. They elected a rich titled lady. This shows how deeply propaganda shapes things. Now, this it is said is human nature, and you cannot change human nature. On the other hand, it is maintained that human nature is the easiest thing in the world to change if you catch it young enough, and that the idolatry of the slave class and the arrogance of the master class are themselves entirely artificial products of education and of a propaganda that plays upon our infants long before they have left their cradles. An opposite mentality could, it is argued, be produced by a contrary education and propaganda. You can turn the point over in your mind for yourself. Do not let me prejudice you one way or the other. Some argue this behavior is natural and cannot be changed. Others argue human nature is easy to shape when people are young. The pride of masters and the worship of rulers are created by education and propaganda. If education were different, people could think differently. A different type of human mentality can be created through different education and propaganda. The writer tells us to think about this ourselves. He says he does not want to influence our opinion directly. The practical question at the bottom of it all is how the income of the whole country can best be distributed from day to day. If the earth is cultivated agriculturally in vast farms with motor plows and chemical fertilizers, and industrially in huge electrified factories full of machinery that a girl can handle, the product may be so great that an equal distribution of it would provide enough to give the unskilled laborers as much as the managers and the men of the scientific staff. But do not forget, when you bear tales of modern machinery enabling one girl to produce as much as 1,000 men could produce in the reign of good Queen Anne, that this marvelous increase includes things like needles and steel pins and matches, which we can neither eat nor drink nor wear. Very young children will eat needles and matches eagerly, but the diet is not a nourishing one. And though we can now cultivate the sky as well as the earth by drawing nitrogen from it to increase and improve the quality of our grass and consequently of our cattle and milk and butter and eggs, nature may have tricks up her sleeve to check us if the chemists exploit her too greedily. The real issue is how natural wealth should be divided among people. With modern machinery and scientific farming, production can be enormous. Even a single worker can manage powerful machines. If wealth were equally shared, even unskilled workers could live as comfortably as managers and scientists. So warns us not to be too excited about machines. Many mass produced goods are not basic necessities like food or clothing. This is sarcastic. Just because something is produced in large quantity doesn't mean it is useful. Science can extract nitrogen from the air to improve agriculture, but nature may react negatively if humans exploit her too much. And now, to sum up, wipe out from your dreams of freedom the hope of being able to do as you please all the time. For at least 12 hours of your day, nature orders you to do certain things and will kill you if you don't do them. This leaves 12 hours for working, and here again nature will kill you unless you either earn your living or get somebody else to earn it for you. If you live in a civilized country, your freedom is restricted by the laws of the land enforced by the police, who obliged you to do this and not to do that, and to pay rates and taxes. If you do not obey these laws, the courts will imprison you, and if you do too far, kill you. If the laws are reasonable and are impartially administered, you have no reason to complain, because they increase your freedom by protecting you against assault, highway robbery, and disorder generally. Forget the dream of total freedom. Natural needs control at least 12 hours of your day. You must work to survive. Laws limit freedom. Good laws actually increase freedom by protecting people. But as society is constituted at present, there is another far more intimate compulsion on you, that of your landlord and that of your employer. Your landlord may refuse to let you live on his estate if you go to the chapel instead of to church, or if you vote for anyone but his nominee, or if you practice osteopathy, or if you open a shop. Your employer may dictate the cut, color, and condition of your clothes as well as your hours of work. He can turn you into the street at any moment to join the melancholy band of lost spirits called unemployed. In short, his power over you is far greater than that of any political dictator could possibly be. Your only remedy at present is the trade union weapon of the strike, which enemy's doorstep until he does you justice. Now, as the police in this country will not allow you to starve on your employer's doorstep, you must starve on your own, if you have one. The extreme form of the strike, the general strike of all workers at the same moment, is also the extreme form of human folly, as, if completely carried out, it would extinguish the human race in a week, and the workers would be the first to perish. The general strike is trade unionism gone mad. Same trade unionism would never sanction more than one big strike at a time, with all the other trades working overtime to support it. Now Shaw points to a more serious problem. There is a deeper kind of control. Your landlord and boss control your life more than the government. He may control where you live, how you vote, even your personal beliefs. Your boss can fire you anytime. Economic power is stronger than political dictatorship. Workers can protest by striking. Strike means refusing to work until justice is given. If all workers stopped working, society would collapse. Workers would suffer first. Now let us put the case in figures. If you have to work for 12 hours a day, you have 4 hours a day to do what you like with, subject to the laws of the land and your possession of money enough to buy an interesting book or pay for a seat at the pictures or on a half holiday at a football match or whatever your fancy may be. But even here nature will interfere a deal, for if your 8 hours work has been of a hard practical kind, and when you get home you want to spend your 4 hours in reading my books to improve your mind, you will find yourself fast asleep in half a minute, and your mind will remain in its present benighted condition. After long work, very little free time remains. Even leisure depends on money. Physical labor leaves you too tired to enjoy freedom. I take it then that 9 out of 10 of us desire more freedom, and that this is why we listen to wireless talks about it. As long as we go on as we are, content with a vote and a dole. The only advice we can give one another is that of Shakespeare's Iago. Put money in the purse, but as we get very little money into our purses on payday and all the rest of the week, other people are taking money out of it. Iago's advice is not very practical. We must change our politics before we can get what we want. And meanwhile, we must stop guessing about freedom because the people of England in the lump don't know what freedom is, never having had any. Always call freedom by its old English name of leisure and keep clamoring for more leisure and more money to enjoy it in return for an honest share of work. Most people want more freedom, but people accept small benefits like voting rights or unemployment allowance. Shakespeare's advice: real freedom requires money. Workers earn very little. Most of it goes to others, such as landlords, employers' taxes, etc., are constantly taking it away. Real improvement requires political change. Stop talking foolishly and emotionally about freedom. So boldly says English people have never truly experienced real freedom. So says real freedom simply means leisure, free time. Demand more free time, more money to enjoy that time, but everyone must still do their fair share of work. And let us stop singing Rule Britannia until we make it true. Britain proudly sings about ruling the waves and being free. Do not trust politicians who loudly talk about liberty. Such politicians only want to enjoy the fruits of workers' labor without working themselves. Imagine workers finally achieve economic freedom. How will we use our free time and wealth? An old proverb: idleness leads to trouble. Some people become rich suddenly but ruin their lives through unhealthy habits. Wealth can destroy a person if misused. People must be educated to use free time wisely. I will therefore leave you with a conundrum to think over. If you had your choice, would you work for 8 hours a day and retire with a full pension at 45, or would you rather work 4 hours a day and keep on working until you are 70? Now don't send the answer to me. Please talk it over with your wife. So ends with a thought provoking question. Work 8 hours daily and retire at 45 with full pension, or work 4 hours daily and continue working until 70? He does not give the answer. This humorous ending brings the discussion into family life. It also suggests that freedom affects personal and domestic decisions.